So, why is the rim of the mouthpiece important, and how does it affect our trumpet playing, Doug?
Well, the rim is what sets up our chops to buzz. It becomes part of us when we buzz, when we play. And I think people have this wrong. They've had this wrong a long time. People imagine spit buzzing in the air, just, and then you maneuver the mouthpiece in to catch the buzz, right? And, so anything you can't spit buzz in the air, some teachers teach, you don't really own it. It's not really what you're doing. So it doesn't really matter what the rim's like. It's there it's a funnel to catch the buzz. And I'm here to tell you that is absolutely wrong. Um, because as you press on the lips, even gently with the rim, it changes the buzz. It changes the way the buzz happens. It supports, and configures the chops. And so it becomes part of the system. So you're not just catching the buzz, you are influencing the buzz with the rim. That's why the rim matters. It sets you up in the optimal position. It relieves burden on muscles. It allows you the right amount of flexibility. If it's wrong, it can constrain your flexibility. It can be uncomfortable, cause, sores or, friction. So a comfortable fit and an optimized fit is what sets the chops up to buzz well and helps with things like endurance and range and tone. What we've learned, is if you take an identical mouthpiece, same cup, throat, backbore, everything, but just change the rim, it changes how people sound. That is absolutely verifiable over
Without
and over
changing the
again
cup, without
without
changing
changing the
the
cup.
throat.
Exactly. So you're not just it's not just it's not just catching the buzz. It influences the buzz because you can hear it. People play very differently with just changing the rim and nothing else. So that's
Gotcha.
why the rim is important.
Is there one perfect rim for every mouthpiece, or
Well, no, yes, there is. I think I'm increasingly convinced that the perfect rim for every mouthpiece is your rim. We do a lot at Venture where we have artists will design a whole suite of mouthpieces that have the same rim on every mouthpiece, but it's not the same rim for every player. So discovering the right rim for you, but then having the same rim on your orchestral piece, lead piece, piccolo piece, flugel piece, etc., we have found to be very helpful because it we've all done that thing where you play, some orchestra and then you switch to the lead piece and it feels tiny and constricting and weird, and or vice versa, and it feels, gargantuan and your buzz isn't right. But if you can match the rim all the way across your gear, or at least match, say, and we'll go into this later, the high point and the outer rim,
yeah,
even if you got to change the inner rim support a little bit, it helps the transition between different instruments. And most of us play more than one instrument, and sometimes have to change instruments, on the fly during a performance. So, yes, I think there is one magic rim for everybody, but you got to find it, and then once you got it, then you should copy it to all your instruments and use it. So how's that for a two sides of a coin answer?
it makes a lot of sense, especially using VenCAD to take that rim and apply it to all those different instruments. Moving into our next question, what does it mean when someone says their rim feels flat, narrow, or round, and what are the advantages or disadvantages to those?
Right. So let's look at a rim. And, I always think it's good to start from a vanilla place. I mean, you probably now, having spent, tens of hours in VenCAD, are starting to recognize rims. I can see them on the back of my eyelids when I sleep. Um, but it's always helpful to start because, if you ask somebody to just sort of, draw freehand the rim that you play right now, it would look about as good as my self portrait, distended and weird, and like. Let's look at vanilla together. And by vanilla, I of course mean a Bach 3C. It's a good palate cleanser. It's the platonic ideal of mouthpieces. It's the smallest of the big mouthpieces, the biggest of the small mouthpieces. It has a very it is the color beige. So if you can sort of start to internalize that shape, because we've all played a 3C. If you haven't, then I don't know, what your life is about. But we don't all still play a 3C, but we've all tried it. So you have some base of comparison. So just sort of, let this, kind of like when my music theory professor, sometimes he'd be like, we're doing a C major palette cleanse. And he would just play several octaves, to sort of get us all in the same harmonic space after we've been doing like weird harmonic stuff. This is our palate cleanse. So if you imagine this as the average, kind of an average size, an average amount of curvature, then we can compare things to it and see what's different, right? But right away, just notice Venkat puts these little dots, hopefully you can see them in the video, where the high point of the rim is. And now you know what the high point is. It's the point that would, if you put this thing on a table, where would it sit? It would sit there and there because it's hard. Of course, your lips mash into it a little bit, which brings up one of the most important things that I like to talk about. When people talk about their rim size, they're like, "Oh, I play a 620 inner diameter." What they mean is a 0.620 inch inner diameter. And I hate reducing the idea of a rim to one number because where do you measure that number? You tell me what is the inner, uh, where does that number measure? Is it measured here? I mean, if your lips were made of granite, you would only touch just at the high point. Is that the inner diameter? Well, no, it's not. Your lips are more mushy. Is that where your lips end up? I don't know. Or at the end of the inner bite, where does the inner bite end? Is it there? Is it there? Is it there? Is it there? Like those are wildly different measurements. And so, saying the inner diameter of this is whatever. I don't think that's it's like saying what's the width of a person? It's 22 inches. Well, where are you measuring that? So take that number with a grain of salt. It's better to explore these things in VenCAD, which is a free download, which everyone should have. But let's compare that to something else. Here, I'll tell you something that a lot of classical players know. The ones who say I'm not, everyone played a 3C at some point. Then at some point they're like, well, you know what? I need more help in the upper register. Let me get a 3E because it's the same rim but a different cup. And they try it and it goes horribly wrong. They can't play it. They can't make a sound. They are out of endurance after 5 minutes. And they're like, I'm just not a shallow mouthpiece kind of person. And then they keep playing their 3C and eventually 1.5C and eventually 1.25 C forever. And I sometimes find them in their late 20s and their 30s, and they need to play a pops show, and they're trying to do it on a huge mouthpiece because I'm not a shallow mouthpiece kind of person. Well, look at this. The green, the 3E, is definitely shallower in the cup for sure. But look at the rim. They're not the same rim. They're not the same rim at all.
Not even close.
Not even close. The high point of the 3E is farther out. The bite is more, and again, is more gentle. It's less supportive on the inner rim. It's also less supportive on the outer rim. These are all things we can just see. There's no engineering going on. We're just looking at the diagram and imagining what it would be like to lay on top of this with your lips. There's less support on the inside, less support on the outside. And so therefore, this is a completely different experience. And that lack of a crisp inner bite, that more gentle roll in, is what leads many people to feel like they're bottoming out. Bottoming out is not a cup issue. We're not talking about cups today, but we'll acknowledge their existence. When you say I'm bottoming out on this shallow mouthpiece, your lips are not hitting the belly of the cup here. They're not releasing cleanly from the inner rim. That's the bottoming out that you're feeling. So, now, what are we talking about when we say, is it, we talk a little bit about, flat, narrow, round. That's kind of like, what does the word warm mean to you in relation to a sound? Or, bright or dark? Can you be warm and dark? Does warm mean dark? Like, those are just adjectives. What does round mean to you? I mean, they're both of these things are rounded somehow, What is the logical endpoint of flatness? Well, let's find a. You may have to edit this bit out here. Well, I have to rummage.
Yeah, it's all good. Like, would a P rim be considered a pretty flat rim, or
No, Do you know where I'm going? You know where this is going?
I can't see the stuff here.
Um,
Yeah, like I can't. Yeah, I just can't see what's typed up there. Oh, that's a flat rim.
yeah, that's a flat rim.
Yeah.
So all right, so let's cut back in here. All
Mhm.
right, so I've just brought up a uh, let's go back in time. I brought up a Baroque trumpet model. They are famous for having very flat rims. Look at that in blue. You know, so is that flatter? Yeah, I guess in some sense. You know, but is flat the opposite of sharp? I don't think so because and I'm going to turn off the red and green and the Bach ones and just look at that thing for a minute. That is like a shelf. It is flat, but here at the corner, it's sharp there, and it's kind of sharp here and flat in the middle. So, a perfectly notchy looking thing is flat in the middle and sharp in the corners. I guess a perfectly well rounded thing, is more like that. And then something like a 3C is in the middle. It's a little flatter in the middle, you know, but a little less notchy at the outsides like this. These are just words I'm saying. The pictures are worth 1,000 words. So hopefully, as you're
Yeah.
internalizing these pictures, that makes sense. So, yeah, the high point matters tremendously, but also where it goes from the high point. How fast does it and how supportively does it roll in? How fast and supportively does it roll out? And probably you can imagine what that flat one feels like. you know. And sometimes these round, quote unquote, round like this. Look how well rounded that green one is. That's very round. Is that comfortable? Actually, there's not a lot of support at that high point because it rolls off quickly in either direction. That can be a pressure point. That can feel like a knife edge on your chops because it's not well supported. On the other hand, oh, where did that BT3 go? That Renaissance one, that Baroque one, that one's very well supported in the middle, but then it might feel sharp on either edge. So, something that looks round can feel very, knife like because it's not well supported. Something that's too flat can give you knives on the inner and outer edge. So, the point, as with many things in life, most of us end up with an optimum that's somewhere in the middle. Now, where in the middle? That's why you got to test. You have to do your testing, try different things, and ideally be able to try them and look at them in VenCAD or on Trumpet Cloud, so that you can get this association between how it feels and how it looks.
Mhm.
And then you find what is the thing that feels most comfortable, that sets up my buzz to sound the best. You know, Ideally, you're trying these different rims all on the same cup and backbore, so that you're only changing one thing at once. Because that nice warm tone, was it due to the rim or was it due to the different backbore? If you change, but ideally compare apples to apples, and that's why the Classique kit is such a great thing. Cut to add for Classique kit.
Can you
Um,
throw up a couple different of the rims available in the Class C kit?
yes, let's do that. That sounds like an excellent idea. Um, yeah, we closely guard all of our proprietary design. Just kidding. You can see everything we make because we're not here to hide something from you. So here is a well. I think the 620, 630. Yeah, there's the. Let's look at the class. Let's look at that. The Classique is the red now, and let's look at that Bach 3C again, having that vanilla. You know, Notice those are actually semi-similar. So in red we have a Classique P rim in ostensibly the same rough inner diameter size. Again, not to reduce it to one number, but you see there's pretty good overlap in the inner diameter. They're roughly the same size class. You know, so, but you look, how are they different? The Classique is a little bit notchier inside, so it actually feels maybe a little bit more supportive inside, and it's a little bit flatter to the outside, a little more supported. So it's a little bit squarer of a rim, not by a lot. But then you can go through and change. What about the Q rim? Well, that's even more supported on the inner diameter, more notchy on the inner diameter. Good for things like articulation, cleanliness. you know. and a little bit less supportive on the outside. So it's, more of an inner rim heavy thing.
And those
Uh,
two mouthpieces will play so differently from each other,
so different.
just changing that rim.
Yes,
They'll
and
sound
and you can
different, they'll
you can
articulate
prove this to
different.
yourself by literally screwing it off the top of a Classique assembly, and because then you know for sure it's the same exact piece of metal, same cup, same throat, same back bore. All of a sudden, your sound is different, your articulation is different, your range is different. You're like, what's going on? Well, your chops are you're not just catching a buzz that's being aimed off into space. Your chops are being mangled and molded into position by the rim. They are part of you when you play. Uh, yeah, let's look at. I just zipping through here. The R is more rounded on both edges. See the P and Q, and more like that 3E, a little more rounded. If you like that, then that might be the one for you. The S, but of course, none of these designs is earth shattering. The earth shattering thing is the ability to test them all against each other.
Yeah.
This one is also rounded, but carries a little further into the cup. It's almost like a double bite. These pictures tell the story. I don't have to narrate the story. That's the beauty of them. And then there's the weird one, because they're always in the lead kit is the X cup. Here it's the Z rim. There's always a weird one. This is the massively wide one. If
Yeah. What are
and
some people going to experience when they play that?
they're like, it's weird because it's unlike anything you've probably played before. Some people find it like very supportive and comfortable. Some people find it very obtrusive, and you will have a blue cheese or cilantro react. You'll love it or you'll hate it, but you should try it because then you know something about yourself. So yeah, that's the way that we take Classique, and they're all the same. All those are nominally the same inner diameter size. Specifically in Classique, we measure where it screws on. They're all exactly the same inner diameter size, but the shapes are so different and they feel so different. They play so different, even if the cup and throat and backboard are all the same.
Are there like generalities that you can make, on a rim that has a sharper quote unquote bite compared to another one? Will that affect it in a certain way, or is that going to be different to every person?
I find that there's some degree of variation, because some people are more high engagement players. They roll into the cup, and their chops, extend down the cup walls and grip them more. Some people are very stacked straight up and down, where they don't protrude into the cup at all, and so they will experience the same rim very differently. But generally speaking, you know, I associate a more gentle inner bite with people who roll into the cup and like to, get in there after it. And um, it can help with upper register and things by allowing you to anchor in and support, you know. But the crisper inner diameters, I tend to imagine, be more about articulation and cleanliness, but all up to a point. If it's too notchy, it becomes abrasive and brittle, is not good. You have to find the right thing for you, and no one can know that. People want me to either, if I send you a picture of my embouchure, can you tell me what not? No, I can't tell you. That's science fiction. Some people with fleshy, thick lips end up with a tiny inner diameter and a very, some people with, tiny, thin lips end up with a giant mouthpiece, and vice versa. There's no rhyme or reason. Looking at someone's face, watching them buzz doesn't give you many clues as to what will be the right fit for them. You have to just test. And that's knowledge that is important to gain. And then once you have it, it's important to write it down, save it, put it in your Dropbox so that what you need and where do you start from as you evolve your designs forward.
How does somebody know if they need to play on a wider like inner diameter, or if they want to push that rim width and make it wider, kind of like that Z rim? Like, how do people know that? Do they just it's just playing, it's testing? They know what they currently have, and what are some things they want to improve? How do they know what direction to go with that?
Yeah, I think it is entirely empirical. Like you just got to test. Now if and you got to give it enough of an acclimation period, at least a few days on it to if it's a big change, you have to test it a little bit to really get a flavor. I think it's a mistake to just buzz three notes and be like, no, that's wrong. I mean, if it's hardly uncomfortable, then it's wrong. But if you're like, this is different, I don't know, you got to take your time on that. That's why things like at home fit kits or prototypes are great because you can noodle with them a while, but you have to test it. Now, if you're having, if the upper register is not happening, that means that you probably need and want some more inner diameter support. You need a smaller inner diameter. I am a fan of as small an inner diameter as you can play, where your chops buzz well, um, and you don't feel constricted in any way, and your articulations are clean. Um, Now, if your articulations are not clean, if you're not buzzing effectively, well, then it's too small. But like the Hagstrom model, again, this is like a 3C size class to give you a little bit of let me bring up VenCat here to give you a little bit of a little bit of the orchestral range. 3C's on the small side for an orchestral situation. There's a one in red is a 1 1/4 C, so that shows you the difference between 1 1/4 and 3. But you look at something like the Hagstrom model, which is an accepted, you know, classical model that people play in orchestras, the Yamaha Hagstrom. Look how small that inner diameter is right there. As far as a 3C is from a 1 1/4, the Hagstrom is that much smaller in the other direction. But then it goes way deep like that to add cup room. So, you can have a much smaller inner diameter and still be a truly legit classical player. You're just going to need to make the cup deeper to compensate. So I think you have to test the different diameters if you have no idea, and find what works well, find what contour works well, what allows the buzz and allows for precision. But I see no reason to not be as efficient as you can. And then if you need more depth of sound, more warmth, darkness, like orchestral things to happen, then you make the cup deeper. But that's the next lesson.
Mm-hmm. So, talking about all this, what this comes down to is establishing the right rim for your face is the first step to finding a true, really well fit mouthpiece, which is
Always,
why different
always.
brands might feel different. If you try a Bach or you try a Yamaha or a Shoki, you're going to have three very different rims, even if the
Yes,
cup diameter, not cup diameter, cup volume is the same, if the throat's the same, the backbore is the same. All those mouthpieces are going to feel vastly different just because of the rim.
absolutely. And I think it's the sort of thing that you definitely should, invest the time and energy to find what your rim is. And then every
What's
couple of few years, as your, collagen elasticity changes or whatever, you reassess. But it's a little bit of a moving target. We are moving targets. We change, our tastes change. But yeah, find your rim and then use a service like ours to stick it on every mouthpiece that you own.
what's the cheapest way to try that, like a bunch of rims?
Well, I mean, one way is that, you can 3D print everything in the VenCAD library for free, just for the call, um, the Classique kit that we've now just released to the public is a way to try, 5 different rim profiles that what I just showed, for a given size class. It doesn't come with all the rims because it's too many rims, it's too big a kit. But if you know roughly, I'm a 3C-ish person, a 1C-ish person, a 1 1/4 C person, you order the approximate size class, and then you get all those different contours within that size class. They're all the same size, but they're different feels. So that's a quick and easy way to do it.
So it
Um,
sounds like there's probably three or four ways to do it. You can reach out to a shaman. I
yep,
think there's four of us, right?
yep.
Um,
Then
and
you can hook them up with some prints.
yep, and then you can a shaman can get a classic kit if you are local to one,
Yep,
to try all those different rims, and from there you can either order a classic piece or have one printed.
right.
And then that fifth option, not fifth option, final option would be to buy a printer and do it yourself. Which
Yep.
honestly, that's the venture way right there. If you want to,
Well, the Class E kit is the gateway drug, but then when you really need to go whole hog, then you buy a printer and you get sucked in, and then all of a sudden you find yourself printing them for others, and that makes me deliriously happy to think about friends fitting friends and getting them hooked. And then when you've got something that works really well in resin, you get it in brass. Our
like just
saying
as
here
simple as a click of a button.
at a click of a button. and importantly, input of a credit card. Uh, you know, I'll make it for you in brass, and it'll be just the same as the plastic, only better. We all agree that brass plays better than plastic, but as we also say, the right fit in plastic plays immediately better than the wrong fit in brass.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. And you
And there are
can
people playing these 3D print prototypes on the stages of top five orchestras, and they're playing them on TV because immediately they're like, this is better, I'm changing to this right now, while I wait 2 or 3 weeks to for me to machine and polish and plate a permanent mouthpiece. It's immediately better than the thing they had before if it's
this
the
is
right fit.
all just talking about the rim. Like
Just the
we have
rim.
not even started talking about
Nope.
the cup, the throat, the backboard, the gap, the shank, whatever you want to, the overall the overall length of the mouthpiece. We haven't covered any of that. All it is just getting that rim fit is really the first step to finding your right mouthpiece.
Absolutely. Find it, lock it down, write it down, and then evolve it forward onto different underparts, cups, throats, backboards,
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Awesome. Well, Doug, is there anything else we want to talk about regarding the mouthpiece or
I think we've really hit. I remember the first time it really dawned on me. Well, there were two formative experiences that I had, um, two aha moments when it comes to rims. One was a very well-known principal trumpet player in a top five symphony sent me all of his mouthpieces to scan. Right, um, C trumpet piece, B flat trumpet piece, D E flat trumpet piece, piccolo piece, his pops lead piece, all these different mouthpieces, all different manufacturers, all the usual suspects, Bach and Schilke and Curry and a couple others, and they were all over the place. But the one thing that he always had was the high point was always in the exact same place. He did not know this. He hadn't measured it, hadn't selected for it. Is this what felt comfortable? Even though he used a smaller inner diameter for piccolo, the high point was in the same place. So the high point, really, the anchor point, the first contact with your chops, is important. And the other thing that really showed me something is this: I was fitting this advanced cornet player, and we made up a few different things, and all we were changing was the outer from the high point out. We left the inner bite the same, left the high point the same, and just gave a little bit more or less outer rim support. And the way her sound changed, and between several different prototypes of that, it was huge. One sounded amazing, one sounded very thin, one felt very uncomfortable. Her sensation and the sound production were so different. Just changing the loft of that outer rim, that's what told me, boy, it's not about a magic cup design or a magic backbore that makes your sound. The sound starts with the meat, and the meat is arranged into its, both internally by your musculature. It's arranged by your airstream and air pressure, flowing through the aperture, but it's also morphed and shaped by that rim, and it matters to everything, to sound, to range, to endurance, all of it, so much before
and
you even get into the rest of the mouthpiece.
once it feels good and sounds good, you can make alterations by changing the other parts of the
Yes.
mouthpiece. And
Once it feels good and sounds
that's
good,
the easy part.
once your buzz is free and natural and your endurance is good and everything, and it feels comfortable, yes, then you lock that down, write it down, and yes, stick it on all sorts of different things for all different playing contexts on all different instruments, for sure.
And it's never been easier. It is
Never
it
been
is
easier.
it is better now than it ever has been.
The distance between measuring something that you have lying in your shoebox, I love this rim, but it sounds terrible because it's on a weird back, to designing a new thing, to trying it, and then to manufacturing it, that distance has never been shorter.
Yeah. So, all right.
That's
I
what we're here
think that's
for. Call your shamans, give them your business, give me your money.
I think that's going to wrap us up on the rim. Thanks, Doug.
Hey, sure thing.